You have reached Wrestling Soul's Toy Collector Review. I'm your man, Red Steele, and today I'll be reviewing from Transformer Age of the Primes, Blast Off. Transformers Age of the Primes Blast Off. But before I get into the actual review, I just want to go over some of the spectacular details on this packaging. Up front here, too, we'll start showing you with the figure and all its accessories inside. In the top corner here, it says more than meets the eye. Below that, you have the Autobot symbol. Down here, you have 205 Bruticus. In the middle here, it says it takes 17 steps to transform him. And on the bottom here, you have 8+, which is the age requirement for this figure. The other side of the packaging here, you have two beautiful illustrations of Blast Off, both in this robot mode and in the space shuttle mode. Across the bottom here, it says Transformers Age of the Primes. In the corner, you have Combaticon Blast Off. In the other corner here, you have the Hasbro emblem. The top of the packaging here, again, you have Combaticon Blast Off. In this corner, this time, you have the Takara Tomy logo. The other side of the packaging here, on the very top, it says 205 Bruticus, collect to combine. And over here, you have an awesome illustration of Bruticus. Then down there, you have Transformers Age of the Primes. And on the very bottom here, it says Combaticon Blast Off. The other side of the packaging here, on the very top, it says till all are one. In the middle here, you have a montage of some of the Primes. And on the bottom here again, it says Transformers Age of the Primes. And down here it says it is a deluxe class figure. Then back of the packaging here, in the top corner, it says Combaticon Blast Off. In this corner here, it says 205 Bruticus, collect to combine. In the middle here, you have all the figures features, such as Blast Off in his robot mode, Blast Off in his space shuttle mode, and over here it says it takes 17 steps to get there. Over here you have the More Than Meets the Eye authentic logo, and down here you have the Hasbro emblem. Transformers Age of the Primes Deluxe Class Combaticon Blast Off. Blast Off was released December 2025 with the suggested retail price of $27.99. It is available at all major retailers. Blast Off was released along with the other Transformers Age of the Primes Deluxe Class Wave 4 figures, Junkion Jalopy, Quick Strike, Quintus Prime, and Surshot. Blast Off is a Generation 1 inspired figure that converts to a space shuttle mode in 17 steps. His accessories include 2 blasters and instructions. Blast Off stands 5.5 inches tall, and he is meant for fans ages 8 and up. Now I'm going to go ahead and convert Blast Off from his robot mode all the way to his space shuttle mode. But the first thing you always want to do before you transform any of your Transformers, you want to remove all the weapons and accessories. I'm going to take Blast Off's blaster here, put this off to the side. With the first step of the transformation, you have Blast Off's fist right there and right there. You want to take his fist, you want to rotate them in just like that. Do that to the other fist and rotate it in just like that. So step number 2, you take Blast Off's shoulder piece right here. You want to separate it from the body, but you do that by taking the arm piece and clicking it up just like that. And then you want to go bring the shoulder piece up just like that. Do that to the other side of the arm piece, bring it up, untap it from the side of the body, and bring the arm up just like that. You have Blast Off in sort of a T-pose. And step number 3, with the bicep meets the shoulder, you want to take this arm piece and rotate it up just like that. Do that to the other side of the arm piece and rotate it up just like that. So step number 4, we're going to Blast Off all the way around. You have that backpack piece right there. You want to take that backpack piece and bring it down just like that. So step number 5, you have Blast Off's head. You have a hinge joint right below his head. You want to take that head piece and push it down just like that. So step number 6, you have these arm pieces right here. You have a hinge joint right there and right there. You want to take these arm pieces and bring them up. In the middle of these arm pieces, you have a porthole right there. You have a peg right there. I want to bring everything in the middle so everything kind of tabs into place. And you have another porthole and peg right in the front here. Have it peg all into place just like that. This is step number 7. You have that back panel that you brought down earlier on. You have that hinge joint right there. There's some portholes right there, and you have a couple pegs right there. Look at that backpack piece. I want to flip it up and peg it right into place just like that. Step number 8. Well, take Blast Off now. You have these panels in front of his legs right there and right there. You have a hinge nut right there and right there. Well, take these panels and flip them down just like that. Do that to the other side. Bring that panel down just like that. So step number 9. Between Blast Off's leg, you have a tab and a porthole. Well, bring these pieces together and tab them together just like that. So step number 10. Well, take Blast Off now. You got this hinge joint right there. You want to take this whole top piece and bring it forward just like that. So step number 11, we're going to collapse these thighs into the leg just like that. So step number 12, you want to these panels now. You want to go and close them up just like that and just like that. So step number 13, you have these engines right here, these thrusters. You want to bring these thrusters down just like that and just like that. So step number 14, you want to flip Blast Off over here. You have a wing right there and right there. You have a hinge joint right there and right there. You want to take these wings, we're going to bring them down just like that. Do that to the other side, bring that wing down just like that. So step number 15, you have this fin right here. You have a hinge joint right there. You want to bring that fin up just like that. So step number 16, you want to flip over Blast Off. And right above the Decepticon insignia, you have this little piece right there. You want to pry that little piece open and it reveals a landing gear. Then the 17th and final step, you want to grab Blast Off's blaster here, and you get that little peg right there, and on the wing you have a porthole. You want to plug that blaster into his wing just like that. Do that to the other side, grab that other blaster, plug it into the other wing just like that, and now you have Blast Off in his full Space Shuttle mode. Now that Blast Off in his Space Shuttle mode, and on my display table, so I'm going to go over some of his plate features and accessories. First, I talk about his blasters. And he comes with 2 of these blasters, and as you saw in the final step of the transformation, the instructions had you attach these blasters to the bottom of the wing. But in the Generation 1 cartoon series, Blast Off does not really arm himself while he's in his shuttle mode, and personally I'm not a big fan of arming my Transformers while they're in their alt mode. And if you don't know what an alt mode is anything that's not the robot mode. So this is a vehicle mode, an animal mode, in this case a space shuttle mode. So I'm going to go take this blaster here and attach it from the wing just like that, and just like that, and I'm going to put them off to the side. So I'm going to go and talk about Blast Off. And I am glad they went the route of bringing Blast Off back as a shuttle. And I say that because in Combiner Wars, they went ahead and made Blast Off a jet, which makes a lot of sense. And I know a lot of fans did not like that because it wasn't very true to who Blast Off really was in the Generation 1 toy line and cartoon series. But if you look at the Combaticons are more of a combat-based team. So Onslaught was a truck that had cannons attached to it. Brawl was a combat tank. Swindle was a combat jeep, and Vortex was a combat helicopter. And where Blast Off did not fit in was he was a shuttle, and that doesn't really fit a military team. And I thought it was very unique too, and it didn't make much sense, but shuttles are always cool. And back in the 80s, nothing really made sense in the 80s anyways. But Blast Off was a cool addition to the team, and I mean the Combaticons were a very menacing team. And it was really cool when they combined the Bruticus also, which I'm not really going to get into in this review. I'm going to have a review dedicated just to Bruticus once I collect all 5 Combaticons. But Blast Off is fantastic. And I do have my my Combiner Wars version of Blast Off, but I have the shuttle version. And you're asking me, well, you just mentioned that Combiner Wars had a jet version of Blast Off. And I do have that version of Blast Off, and that version of Blast Off has a unique history because Combiner Wars tried something a little different, and when they made the jet version of Blast Off, he was very reminiscent of Slingshot, which Slingshot was not part of the Aerialbot team in the Combiner Wars, but he looked like Slingshot, and he had the color scheme of Blast Off, and they released him as Blast Off. I'm not sure if they made a last-minute decision not to include Slingshot as part of the Aerialbots because he wasn't replaced by Alpha 1, which is a helicopter, a rescue helicopter, which is a really cool addition to that team. But a lot of fans were upset because it just was not the true team to them, because you need Slingshot with the Aerialbots and you need to Blast Off as the shuttle. So later on they did make a Blast Off shuttle, but he was included, or he came out around the time that Titans Returns came out, and I ordered this one as a Hasbro Pulse exclusive. This was only available through Hasbro Pulse, or if you bought the Japanese version of the Combaticons, which was I think Transformers Legends was what it was called in Japan. But that was the only way of getting Blast Off. So Blast Off had a very limited run. He's very hard to find. And from what I've seen, he's not a remolding or retooling of any of the other Combiner Wars limbs. He's actually to me, he was an exclusive mold that was just made because like his transformation was way different than any of the other Combiner teams. I mean, and they did make a lot of Combiner teams for Combiner Wars. I mean, they went as far as make the Terracons, and they made the Technobots, and they had all the teams made. But to me, this was a unique mold that they made just to appease the fans, you know, because Blastoff is a shuttle, and he's not the greatest shuttle in the world, but they did it just enough to make him look like what he looked like in the Generation 1 cartoon series. But I also do have my Generation 1 version of Blastoff, do a side-by-side comparison. And the cool thing I always thought about the Generation 1 toys is they always made like little wheels on all the figures, so you could always roll them across any surfaces. I mean, you do have that with the Combiner Wars version, but you get these little round pieces right here. And the bad thing about this version of Blastoff is this is a painted detail, so you do risk causing some mold damage to the figure. You have this little tab right there. So I wouldn't advise rolling this on any abrasive surfaces, and you risk causing damage to the rest of the body because the body does hang really low to the ground. And same with this version of Blastoff, where you have a landing gear that's actually molded onto the figure where it goes in and out, but still, it's one piece. It's not really a wheel like the Generation 1 version of Blastoff, where it doesn't roll. You get these little tabs right here that are makeshift wheels, but they don't roll also. And the body does hang kind of low to the ground too, so the Age of the Primes version of Blastoff, I wouldn't really recommend rolling it on any abrasive surfaces. And on the back here, you'll see these thrusters on the back of Blastoff that are all kind of like, you know, consistent with each other. They're about the same size, they're black. Well, on the back of Blastoff, you got the thrusters here. You got 4 thrusters this time, but these 2 thrusters are more meant to be his feet, which is really, really cool. So that's why they're a little different than the top thrusters, because, you know, space shuttles have more consistent thrusters, and I believe the Combiner Wars version of Blastoff only had 2 thrusters. But nonetheless, I have to say, out of all the versions of Blastoff I run across, this is my definitive Blastoff because he looks great in both modes, which I'll get in a moment, but the shuttle mode is fantastic. I mean, it's very, very faithful to the animated model from the Generation 1 cartoon series, which is what us fans clamor for, especially Generation 1. I'm going to go ahead and put these 2 figures off to the side, and I mean, with the quality of Blastoff so far, and what I've seen from Vortex, I think the Combaticon team is going to be a great team, and they're just putting so much love in these figures. And when you flip Blastoff over, you're not seeing a lot of hollow spaces or a lot of robot kibbles, so they're doing a better job when they're engineering these figures to kind of conceal the robot modes in both modes, which is very, very nice. But I highly recommend picking up Blastoff. And let me rotate him around so you can see what he looks like from all angles. But from what I've seen so far from Vortex and Blastoff, I highly recommend getting into the Combaticons. Now that I have Blastoff in his robot mode and on my display table, I once again want to go over some of his plate features and accessories. First, I talked about his blasters. And like I mentioned earlier on, he comes with 2 of these blasters. And according to the instructions, we're going to arm Blastoff with these blasters while he's in his robot mode. Because the handle of the blaster here is actually a 5mm peg. Each one of his fists has a 5mm porthole. Put that blaster and plug it in either one of his fists just like that. Put out the other blaster, take the other blaster and plug it right in his other fist. And now you have Blastoff armed with both of his blasters. But also, according to instructors, there's a second way of arming Blastoff with these blasters. That's because on the side of his forearm right here, you have a porthole right there and right there. Take that blaster now, you unplug it from his fist and just plug it right in his forearm, just like that. And just like that. And now you have Blastoff armed with both his blasters on his forearm. Very, very cool way of arming Blastoff. And you have a lot of options. But also, according to the instructors, we're storing these blasters on Blastoff while he's in his robot mode. It's on the side of his leg right here on the wing panel. You have a porthole right there and right there. You can take these blasters and just store them on his wing, just like he had them stored or plugged in during his shuttle mode. So if you wanted to just transform him from the shuttle mode to his robot mode, you can leave the blasters in there and they'll just remain in the same position. But a real cool nod to Generation 1. There's a way of arming Blastoff with his extra blasters. You see, he comes with two cannons that I mentioned during his shuttle portion of his review, where you could arm his shuttle with these 2 cannons, and he comes with a little blaster. Well, those little cannons actually plug into his leg, and you can arm them this way. And this isn't really in the instructions, but this is kind of a nod to the Generation 1 toy. So you can arm them with the cannons. I didn't really bring those cannons out for the sake of this review, but you can plug those cannons into the bottom of the Generation 1 version of Blastoff, and you can have him armed with those 2 cannons on his legs and his little blaster in his fist, which is really, really cool. But I'm not a big fan of storing my weapons on my Transformers while they're in a robot mode, because why store them when you can arm them on your display shelves, and they look much more menacing on your shelves, fully armed and ready for battle. So I'm going to put the blaster in Blastoff's hand. And Blastoff, the Generation 1 version of Blastoff, only came with 1 blaster. He came with 2 larger cannons, but in the Generation cartoon series, he did arm himself with this little blaster right here, which is really cool, so I'm going to leave that for the rest of the review. But this Blastoff, to me right now, is my definitive Blastoff. For years, I had the Combiner Wars version of Blastoff, the 2.0 version of Blastoff, because I did have the Jet version of Blastoff as my definitive until I picked up this one. And I picked up this one, and then this replaced my Blastoff. And there's 2 different ways of forming Bruticus or any of the combiners in Combiner Wars. You could actually combine them according to the instructions where they look like what they look like with Combiner Wars, and at least in the cartoon series, or you can combine them and make them more reminiscent of the Generation 1 version. But I won't really get into that in this review, because this review will be primarily about Blastoff, and I will have a separate review for Bruticus later on when I acquire all 5 members of the Combaticons. But this version of Blastoff to me was definitive because he was the closest thing to the animated model from the Generation 1 cartoon series. But with Age of the Primes version of Blastoff, they pulled it off. I mean, even with the arm here, because he had that stylized arm with the animated model where it's like, you knew it was part of the shuttle, but I did not know how they were going to actually mold this arm piece where you had this piece right here that kind of comes down and over his forearm like that. And I think it's really cool that they were able to pull it off, even with the transformation, because this transformation is very reminiscent of the transformation for the Generation 1 toy, where you have the cockpit of the shuttle that kind of splits in half and becomes his arms, and his fist is the nose cone of that shuttle, which is really cool that they're able to still pull that off with the engineering. I mean, you get the wings on the side here, which is almost reminiscent of the Generation 1 toy, and the thighs collapse into the legs, which you kind of have that with a little bit of different engineering. I mean, the engineering is very apparent in this figure, but they did something different, because it's almost like you could almost flip this figure over, because, I mean, you turn him around just like that, and they have this option where you can kind of have him appear like the other combiner figures for Combiner Wars. But the reason I know that this is incorrect because his fists are flipped over, where his thumb's on the outside instead of on the inside. So I do believe he is meant to be transformed. So he has a cockpit right here on as his chest. So you do have to transform this way, because I have seen Blastoff displayed the other way around. But I believe this is the way that they want you to transform him, at least according to Transformers Legend, the Takara series. But having all 3 generations of Blastoff side by side is really cool to see how, over time, how engineering and some trial and error has actually got us to the definitive version of Blastoff. Because all of us fans back in the day, when we were playing with these Generation 1 toys, we would see the animated model on the Generation 1 cartoon series, and we'd have to use a lot of imagination to kind of correlate this figure being what we saw on screens. Well, I mean, through 40 years of engineering feats and trial and error, I mean, you go from there to this, which is a great segue, because this Blastoff is still a fantastic figure. And to me, he's probably one of my crown jewels of my collection, because he is very hard to find. And they really didn't produce a lot of these for Combiner Wars. I mean, you can get the Legends version from Japan, but you'd have to buy the whole set. So that was fairly pricey. But to go to an animated model of Blastoff where it's so cartoon accurate, it's crazy. I mean, even the back here, I don't have him transformed correctly, but you flip that panel up and now you have Blastoff, correctly transformed. But I mean, I don't see a lot of hollow pieces even in the inside of the leg here. You might have this little hollow space right here, but it's very well concealed. It's very, very nicely done. Even with the arms here, you don't have a lot of hollow spacing here. You have this, but that's because the engineering of the hinge joint right there. I'm going to go ahead and take my Combiner Wars and my Generation 1 version of Blastoff and put them off to the side, because I want to talk about Blastoff. This is a fantastic figure, and I saw some early production shots of him just a couple months ago. So he came out rapidly. I mean, just the plans and just the announcement that he was being produced, and then they showed the prototype. I mean, there wasn't a lot of time before this figure actually hit toy shelves. So they're they're bringing out these figures pretty quick, but I mean the points of articulation are fantastic. I mean, you have semi-toe articulation, you have the hinge here, where you can angle them in certain action poses. You have knee articulation, you have the thigh swivel right here, you have the hip joint that goes up and down, and front and back. You have the waist articulation here. You have forearm right here, where the elbow bend. You got the bicep articulation, the shoulder. You have the fist, so you have a lot of points of articulation. You have ball socket joints, so you can turn Blastoff's head in all kinds of directions. And he's a fantastic figure, just a nice thing to see. I mean, when you go from Generation 1, where you don't have really any points of articulation, the head does not move, you might have some slight arm articulation because you have a ball socket joint, but there's really like maybe 2 points of articulation in this figure. Then you go to the massive amounts of points of articulation for this figure, and on top of that you have a cartoon accurate figure, just a beautifully done figure, and I'm just happy to have Blastoff just kind of going from Combiner Wars, where they have this version of Blastoff, which isn't that bad, but saying that the original version of Blastoff for Combiner Wars was a slingshot redeco is kind of sad, and they brought that out to kind of appease a lot of the fans, but to have this figure finally hit toy shelves. And like I said, I'll get into more the combining aspects of the Combaticons when I get all 5 of the Combaticons to form Bruticus, but until then, we have Blastoff, Vortex so far, and I know I got Bronze, so Bronze will be my next review. And when Swindle comes out, Swindle is my favorite Combaticon, I can't wait for that to happen. Then have Onslaught, and just to have, you know, 3 of the 4 major combiners from Scramble City in my collection. Just can't wait to see what they're going to do with the Fencer. But if you guys found any of the information in this review valuable, please like and share this video. Also, if you really enjoy my content, please subscribe to my channel, and while you're there, click the bell to be notified of any future videos. I want to thank you guys for watching Red Steele's Toy Collector Review. I'll check you guys out next time.